AskReddit by Bree. What are subtle red flags at a job interview that say working here would suck? I always ask about training and learning curves. Every job I've had that went wrong, I noticed that when that question came up they stumbled. The current job I have, when I asked the question they had sparks in their eyes as they explained the whole process from day one of shadowing to the transition to working solo. And even when covered hit they managed to continue without skipping a beat. Edit. Oh gosh, thank you. My first ever award. Made my week. Very smart. My last bad job was one where the supervisor took me around and rattled off a non-stop stream of details. I got out my notepad and a pen. We don't have time for that. They told me all about their generous severance packages. In the initial interview. Turnover city. Well, the overtime isn't mandatory, but most folks stick around after hours most days. Spoilers, the overtime is mandatory. Fantastic. You should know that if you choose me for this position, I will be declining the optional overtime. I mean, if you're going to walk anyway, it might be funny to call their bluff. Was interviewed by a senior programmer and the department head. The department head was continuously making condescending remarks towards the other interviewer. Poor guy just sounded broken. Hope he's somewhere else now. On a second interview, the general manager brought me into the conference room with his 8 managers present. At first I thought it was a meet and greet, but no, they grilled me for an hour and a half. Didn't appreciate that, along with a couple other things, and politely withdrew from being considered. Couple months later I'm playing in a bowl tournament and come across one of the managers. I mentioned how weird that interview was. He says, "Weird for you? Ha. I found out then and there you were being interviewed for my job." Yep, dodged a bullet there. Once an interviewer straight up asked me if I had any trouble working for free on weekends. I told them my free time is more valuable than anything and that the only way that I would work a weekend is if they are paying me and if I felt like working a weekend. She got really mad at me and ended the interview right away. Biggest red flag I've ever seen, because they didn't even try to hide it. Since when is it legal to have employees working and not paying them? What a psycho. I was once part of a group onboarding for a job. They handed us all the one-page new hire contract and everyone except me signed immediately. When I read the paperwork, I discovered we were signing a mystery document. Clauses included I agree to abide by the personal search and seizure security policy, attached without other pages. There was no way to determine what I was agreeing to. I kept requesting more and more pages until the HR drone said, "Okay, I guess, me, is just determined to hold everyone up. We will handle you separately if you are struggling so much." After I walked out and drove home, I called the hiring manager to apologize for not taking the job. He informed me that HR reported I had walked out after refusing to be drug tested. I was asked to sign a contract that gave the employer full access to my medical records. It was supposedly for drug testing, but worded badly. I signed every other page and got the job. Would have been very interesting if they felt like drug testing me, and they weren't able to. Last job I worked. Yay, everyone here is new, but it's totally because of COVID. The boss doesn't like people going out to get lunch because they're afraid you'll never come back, so being your own lunch. You'll get weird looks if you leave on time. It was a Chinese-owned company with heavy Chinese work culture influence, so you were expected to stay overtime all week. Also, the people here are nice, but it's pretty stressful. Eater. Also was told by my trainer, "You want to know the best advice I can give you? Find another job." This was like my second week in. "They're afraid you'll never come back" is so funny to me. My favorite is there's a lot of people waiting in line to work here. Count yourself lucky. Huge red flag. After my last job I have learned to take the attitude at an interviewing the job, too. I used to think, well, I need a job and let myself think it was sweet that I was being given the chance, but I have a great work ethic, so I always become the man. Supervisors seem to love that term. Well, I've learned that when they say that, they mean they are going to heap a lot more work and responsibility on you than your co-workers. So, now I go into interviews with the attitude that I can always find another job, so I judge the company now. When they ask out of nowhere, what clients can you bring with you? Deleted. This actually happened to me. Interviewer, do you have any questions for us? Me, what is a challenge this department has recently faced? Interviewer, job security. LeMayo gotta give them props for honesty at that point. He should have just gotten up and opened the door and gestured out. Besides always hiring, they seem almost overly eager to say, yes, we could do that to everything you ask. No job will have literally everything you want, and if your gut is telling you they seem to be promising a bit more than they can offer, they likely are. When you are signing all the forms they give you and you are taking your time to read over every document so that you can fully understand what you are getting into, and people come in and start telling you that you don't need to read this and that, just sign here and so on. Deleted. I didn't know it at the time, but "you'll be wearing many hats" was a sign that they were going to give me the work of 4 positions and the wage of 1. I didn't last a year there before I left, and now I won't even finish reading job ads that include that line. That's a non-profit motto if I ever heard one. My current boss gave me a great tip on the last interview I had. He said ask them if you can pick an employee to chat with about how they like the position you're applying for. They'll give a better impression of the place than management. I got the job I was interviewing for. I turned it down because the above is the kind of management I want to keep in my life. Also, the place undercut my pay offer, I found out, which is certainly also a red flag. I feel like that would put a lot of pressure on the employee to not say anything to dissuade an applicant and upset management. You are required to wear clothing that has the company logo. You must purchase it yourself from the company. This is illegal in most US states, unknown about outside the US. I once showed up for an interview and the manager wasn't there that day. No one called me to let me know. The assistant manager was not apologetic for the scheduling issue at all. She was literally just like, "Oh, she's not here today," in a tone that suggested I should somehow already know that. She said they would call me to reschedule sometime the next week. I told her I was currently unavailable MW but could come in any time. She said if I couldn't make time for the interview, I probably wouldn't be a good fit. I said okay, and went on to my other interviews and ending up working elsewhere. You'd think that would be the end of it, but both the manager and the assistant manager bad-mouthed me to a few other people in the industry, including one of my friends. Hello? I made time for an interview. You disrespected me by not calling me to let me know it was cancelled. I gave you the times I was available to reschedule, and that was disrespectful somehow? I would be livid. Definitely shows a complete disregard for your time. When you ask, "What do you like about working here?" and the interviewer talks about the location of the job, "It's a great place to live," instead of the actual job. I asked this at one of my first interviews right out of school. My interviewer went, "That's a good question," and was ruminating for a good 2 minutes. She went with, "We get pretty good parking spots," and quickly followed with, "And the people are nice." We only want the best of the best. Me, how much are you paying? Minimum wage. Salary, competitive $euro. Reality, minimum wage. I brought up a company's awful Glassdoor reviews and they got so mad they ended the interview. Well, guess I dodged that bullet. I've done this a few times during interviews. I've gotten the same responses and it has never been addressed professionally. Even when companies have stellar reviews, I like to ask about their online reviews. It shows me their reactions to stressful situations. I also figure they're looking at everyone's LinkedIn or whatever, so if they judge me by my online presence, I don't see why I can't do that to them. I'm not obligated to work for someone simply because they extended an interview. At my last place of work, the person interviewing me had a printed cartoon on their wall of someone who looked like a bomb had blown up in their face, with the caption, "I spoke with boss name about it. I guess we're still doing it." That wasn't subtle at all, but I ignored it. The boss was an absolute tyrant who wouldn't listen to her staff, consider changing her mind about anything, or let people do the work they were best suited to do. She wouldn't show up for weeks at a time. The job itself was decent, but she was the worst boss I've ever had. There's a good saying, people often don't quit jobs, they quit managers. Deleted. I had the opposite experience from your first one. Interviewed for a call center, thinking I'd probably either just not take it at all because I imagined it would be really draining, or just do it for a couple of weeks until I found something better. But then decided to stay because everyone seemed really nice and chill about the whole deal. Still working there, and probably gonna stay until I'm done with uni. I was once told sometimes the hourly workers go on strike and they lock us in to keep the production line running, but management brings us steaks and we have an informal agreement with the union so you can cross the picket lines once a week to visit your wife. The question was subtle red flags. I had an interview once. The owner of the company told me he was going to hire me, let the man in the office train me, then fire that man once I was up to speed. He also told me that sometimes employees have to hold their paycheck. And the final capper, not that I needed it, I had already decided not to work for him, was he told me I looked like his nephew. I am female. If they seemed to relieved that someone actually showed up for the interview. I just had an interview last week where they showed up 30 minutes late because they weren't expecting me to show up after the first 3 hires never came to work. Tried to hire me on spot and wanted me to work a different department than what I applied for. Employees are either new hires or have been there for 15 plus years with no in between. There is no room for improvement, it's better to leave for advancement. There are 1 or 2 exceptions to this. I've been at companies where you have the 20 plus year veterans who love what they do and refuse to move up, so you have a young crowd before they move up and an old grizzled veteran crowd. When they feel the need to reassure you in the interview that at that company, they work hard, but also play hard. They don't play hard, it's a sweatshop and they're just trying to convince that it's anything but one. 100% work hard play hard translates to a minimum of 50 hours a week, but you can use our games room because we totally have one. We don't like clock watchers here. We expect everyone to be committed, expecting more work for no extra pay. Getting mad at you when you leave at 5 even though your stated work hours end at 5. Well, then you won't mind if I come in at 9:30. You're not watching the clock, after all. Deleted. Absolutely. It feels wrong initially to pry, but you have every right to know the circumstances you're walking into, within reason. If they volunteer that information, that's a good sign. I once turned down a job offer because they mentioned that the previous person in the position had quit after a few months, and most of the people I interviewed with seemed stressed out. I did the same. During the interview, they told that in the last 2 years, they had 8 people in the position, for 8 months at most. It was a good offer, and a job I would like, but I cannot believe that 8 people in a row were lazy, not good enough or bad at their job. I didn't accept the job offer. Edit, let me clarify. I meant that I could not believe that they were all lazy or bad, but that there was something strange going on with the position. They specified that none of them was fired. They all left for their own decision. They dodge questions on pay, meaning they don't pay enough for what they expect of you. The word family in reference to the employees means they want you to work lots of unpaid overtime. Edit, also forgot, but if they keep talking about the experience you'll gain, that's also code for we know we're going to be underpaying you. Kind of in the same vein, but there was a LPT a while ago,
https://www.reddit.com/r/life-pro-tips/comments/lpt_if_a_temporary_position/ about if a company offers a part-time position with the possibility of a full-time job after. Always ask about the details of the full-time job so you know if it really exists. I went into an interview for a low-level admin position, and they made me put my cell phone in a bucket up front, stating no phones are allowed in the back, it reduces productivity. Big nope for me. I didn't even do that with my high school students because it felt like an infringement on their rights. Funny that it was an insurance company considering it reeks of liability, missed emergency calls, privacy issues, potential for theft, etc. You'll get full-time hours but won't be full-time ACA. We'll do everything in our power to avoid giving you benefits even though we have you working more than 40 hours in a week. I once worked in a grocery store, under a union, hired for part-time. Consistently, was scheduled 40-hour week until the third week of the month, then I worked 39 hours that week. It kept them from giving me benefits. Deleted. Do you have a strong personality meant everyone else who worked there were aging cunts who I literally got into massive shouting matches with and quit over within 6 months of having started. The money was good but no tie. The ad for the job has been running continuously for 10 plus years. I'm a nurse and I applied to a dialysis company that's like this. I had a friend who had good experiences working as a tech at the location closest to her, so I applied at a different location a little closer to me. The manager was late to a video conference interview, and then spent 15 minutes explaining why I could never be late, and how they never really call in sick here. I mean, you get sick time accrued but no one really uses it. I let him know that I'm healthy and active and ride a bike to work, and he got all bent out of shape about me really needing to have a car for emergencies. I asked if I'd ever be asked to go to another location and he said no. I was like okay. Changing the subject. I asked what their COVID policy was and if they provide N95s and testing, and he basically said none of our patients have COVID, without actually answering me. Dude, you never let your nurses take sick days, you disapprove of me commuting by bike in a major city, and none of your patients have COVID? Are you for real? We work hard and we play hard. Translation: you will work 60 plus hours a week. You will be expected to work late nights and early mornings. People will treat this job like their whole life. We'll also underpay you. It may look like a decent salary, but when you back it out to hourly it's not even remotely competitive with industry standard. But we have kegs and a ping pong table. Also, if everyone that interviews you has been there less than 2 years, it's a sign that they can't retain good employees. Thursday night half price appetizers at Applebee's with coworkers is your social life. When they tell you what I'm paying you stays between you and me. Don't discuss pay with anyone else usually means they are trying to pay you less than your coworkers who do the same job and don't want you to know. This happened to my husband. He had been with company for about 2 years and they hired another employee. Told my husband he got a raise and wasn't to tell anyone else. Turns out his raise was equal to new hire pay. If they make shifts 7.5 hours long so you don't get a lunch, you get into that stuff, or they beat around the bush on scheduling explanation. Here they like to hire part-time then schedule you 39.5 hours, or 30 minutes before full-time, to avoid paying insurance and such. Not getting to speak with who your direct manager will be.
A game room or ping pong table is advertised as a perk. The blatant overuse of buzzwords about your profession, clearly written by someone with no clue. People seem tired. Had an online interview with a company a few years ago. Was interviewed by the regional manager, seemed like a normal interview. Halfway through, he let slip that there were 6 other people from his company watching and listening in, but the software was set up so I could not see or hear them. And he actually got a kick out of telling me this. It was like being on a first date with someone, and finding out later she had a hidden camera on her and her parents and 6 other family members were watching the whole time. I'm like, yeah, no. Fuck that noise. I know it's easy to say this stuff when it's not your reality, but I'd like to think I'd chew them all out and hang the fuck up. The fucking nerve. At my current job, after my interview the manager said just don't get involved in the staff drama and you'll be fine. It has not been fine. When they insist the suicide nets are merely a safety precaution. Therefore catching butterflies. I was told we want long-term employment. Don't just leave after 5-6 years. Okay. What do you pay, and what about raises? His response: $12 an hour, 3-4% increases every year. Nope. Told him I'm all set. This was an armored truck service. I had to carry my gun and wear a vest. Which they did offer to pay for. They just took it out of your pay. $600 for handgun, $400 for vest. You had to possess a permit to carry prior to applying. I went back to private EMS. Same pay, but I didn't have to protect other people's money with my life for peanuts. Edit. My issue with this is that this seemed like a place that would absolutely abuse you if anyone ever found out you were looking somewhere else. We want long-term employment and will pay you shit. To me, this means we will retaliate and make your life hell if you try to leave. If you ask what the opportunities for promotion are and they don't give you an answer. When they get the interview time wrong and then gaslight you about it. I've had a couple interviews where that happened and the person told me it was me who made the mistake. I did not feel bad missing the opportunity. I once applied for a job and then a couple weeks later left work to find a voicemail asking why I'd missed the interview scheduled for earlier that afternoon. I called back and told them I had not been invited to an interview and was no longer interested in the position. If you aren't organized to tell someone they have an interview, I don't want to be working underneath you. My GF once during interview, whilst touring the business premises, with the director of development, asked, do you do flexible working, or work from home some days? The development director looked longingly as if that was an unachievable dream and said, oh, I'd love to do flexible working. Do you have coffee in the break room? Alas, there are dreams that cannot be. Your salary is completely commission based and you won't get paid for 2 months. Every solar panel sales job. Edit. I interviewed at a few. Not everyone has 2 months worth of savings right now. Asking if you're planning on having kids. Big red flag. My old boss used to leave a cute photo of her niece on her desk as bait. Yes, Ashley is a doll. Casually, you have kids. My old boss really did not want to hire women with children. We cater lunch and dinner for our whole team. Sounds like a positive, but what it means is, we expect you to be working past dinner time hours, and there will be a lot of social pressure to never leave, and to socialize with the team well past working hours. We don't understand that anyone might want a life outside of work. Less of a problem now, hopefully, but in the tech bro heyday, this was super common.